I want to talk a little bit about total risk, basically, relative to what the transmission rates might be within your community. So, I mean, calculating that probability of infection is important to have an understanding of what the potential impacts are, but that's assuming, right, that somebody is infected in the space, or two people are infected in the space, whatever you set. But it may not, I mean, there's still, you know, most of the time that's still not going to happen. So what's the probability of that occurring? So the best way to at least get kind of a rough idea of what that might be is to look at your county COVID data. And most counties are providing that in some type of dashboard. So I've got Johnson County, Kansas pulled up here as an example. And I think I looked at this, I think the last time I looked at it was Sunday or Monday. But so it provides, there's two numbers at least that I've been looking at to kind of bracket what that potential range might be. The first is the cases per 100,000, and most of them are doing some type of rolling average over the last several days, so it's not fluctuating, you know, a lot from day to day. So they're averaging it over. I've seen 14 days is used a lot. I've also seen 5 days, but this is giving you the number of infected per 100,000, which you can then equate to a percentage. And in this case, it was 0.25% of the population. And that is likely an underestimate of the actual number of cases. Doesn't account for, you know, the asymptomatic or people, or people that are symptomatic that decide not to go get tested. But so it underestimates the range. Now there's another number, percent positivity rate, and that is the percentage of the tests that come back positive. And so in Johnson County, they do two types of calculations. So it's a range of 7.4 to 13.7%. And that's an overestimation most likely, because it's not, the denominator is just the number of people that decide to go in to get tested, right? So it's not a statistically representative sample of the population either. So, and it's like, in most cases, it's probably an overestimate by a fair amount of percentage points. So likely that while that's your bracketing range, potentially, likely that number, that percentage of infection within your community is closer to the lower end somewhere. In this case, for the purposes of this example, I assumed a 1.25%. Yeah, that could still be overestimating it, but it's hard to know. And I'm certainly not an epidemiologist. It's just, this gives you at least something else to look at your data with. So if you have 25 students and that's your infection rate, the probability that one of them out of 25 is infected is roughly 27%, using basic probability math. If it's only 12 students, then it's only 14% the probability, which is, like I said, that's one reason why dedensifying has an impact. So if let's look at incorporating that into the analysis that we just did. So the grayed out rows are what we talked about, probability of infection, and then the additional number of infected. And now let's see what is the, you know, if that is actually the infection rate in the community, 1.25%, what's the risk then given those probability of infections on any given day walking into that room? And so you just multiply the two together, and so that's what this risk, the percentage is down here. So, you know, obviously it's lower than the probability of infection because the probability that somebody out of those 25 is infected is less than 100%. And so it does bring it down, right? It's still, if you're the speaking conditions, it's still potentially problematic for most of them, but things, you know, your actual risk, if that's what your actual infection rate is, comes down. And then it comes down even more, obviously, if you're looking at just 12 students, right? So now almost hardly any of them is the potential that you might walk out and infected after 6 hours. So it's another, we don't have that in the tool because our focus is the building itself. And it's, you know, what number you would use here it's hard to say. At least it's hard for us to say. You know, if you want to talk to your county people to get a better idea of what that better number is to use, you could do that and then do a similar type of analysis and have a better idea. But I'm certainly not qualified to tell you that. I just know that it's somewhere in there, and that's another way to look at the risk that your schools or other populations might be having when walking into any given space.
One way I like thinking about it that Marcel talked to me, you know, it's like this tool, you only get results if you're assuming one person is infected. If 0 people are infected, the results will be nothing. And so figuring out whether one person will even be infected coming into your space, you definitely have to look at your community rates of infection. Otherwise, all the results are 0, which is kind of what we want, right?